All right, welcome back to the deep dive, everybody. It's funny how we all have this inherent need to know what's going on in the world.
Oh, absolutely.
But the way we get that information, man, has changed so much.
Oh, yeah. It's mind-blowing.
Today, we're going to really dig into that evolution of kernalism. We'll start from its very beginnings and trace it through the ages of different technologies, all the way to, right now, with this huge impact of artificial intelligence.
Right, and there is so much to cover with this. I mean, how do we even begin to unpack all of that?
Well, hopefully, we can give you, the listener, a clearer, more insightful view of the most crucial parts of this whole, story. What do you think?
Totally agree. I mean, think about it. We've gone from whispers around a campfire to instant global news right on your phone.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and we're going to try to connect those dots using, well, a lot of different sources and research, but at the heart of it all, like you said, it's this fundamental human need for information.
It's just fascinating how creative people have been over time in finding new ways to share and receive it.
Totally.
Okay, so let's rewind way back. Before the internet, before newspapers even existed, how did people know what was going on?
Well, way back then, it was all about oral communication. Imagine ancient Greece. You'd have these people called Kerikriks standing in public squares announcing official decrees, or news from battles.
Oh, okay.
Very direct, person to person. You're getting the news straight from the source, or at least the messenger.
It's like the OG version of a live news bulletin.
Exactly.
So then, as societies developed and writing came along, I'm guessing things started to get written down more.
You got it. Writing systems emerge, and we start seeing early forms of written news. One example is the Roman Acta Diurna, which were daily gazettes.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, they were inscribed on like stone or metal and posted in public areas for people to read. Covered political happenings, social events, all sorts of things. It was a step towards having a more permanent record of news and reaching a wider audience, though of course still limited compared to today.
Right, right. And then fast forward a bunch, we get to what feels like a massive turning point, this real game changer for sharing information, the printing press.
Oh, absolutely. The invention of the Gutenberg printing press around 1440, that was revolutionary. It allowed people to reproduce information at a scale that was just, well, unheard of before. And news and ideas spread like wildfire, but like any powerful tool, there was a flip side.
I bet.
Yeah, it also meant that, propaganda could spread more easily and quickly, too. Think about the impact of all those pamphlets and books during the Reformation. They had a huge influence on shaping public opinion.
So it's like a technology that can empower people with knowledge could also be used to manipulate them.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a theme we see popping up again and again, right? Okay, so let's jump ahead again, this time to the 20th century. Radio and television came into the picture. How did those change the way people, you and I, get our news?
They brought this immediacy that wasn't there before.
Okay.
Suddenly, real-time reporting became possible.
Wow.
News wasn't something you had to wait for. It came right into your home.
Right.
It created a shared experience nationally, even globally sometimes. Think about those big events being broadcast live. Everyone watching together, like we were all witnessing it at the same time. And the visual impact, well, that added a whole new layer to how people understood what was going on in the world.
Yeah, I could see that. And now here we are in the digital age. It's like post-1990s, information just explodes. We go from a handful of channels to like billions of sources. What do you think is the biggest impact of this digital revolution on like journalism itself?
I'd say for the everyday news consumer, the most obvious changes are just the sheer volume and the accessibility of information. But from the perspective of journalists and news organizations, digital platforms, they really fragmented the audience, right?
Yeah,
People are getting their news from so many different places online, often choosing sources that align with their specific interests.
right.
And this created a huge problem for the traditional business model of news. How do you make money when information is so readily available and often free? Those old ways of generating revenue, they just kind of crumbled.
It's interesting to think about that shift, We've gone from a small group controlling the flow of information in the early days to this completely decentralized world of digital platforms. And now, with AI stepping onto the scene, it feels like another big shift in who or what has the power to shape and distribute information. What are your thoughts on that?
It's a great point. It is about this tension between centralized control and this like decentralized access. Early forms of journalism were very centralized. Then digital platforms blew that open, right?
Yeah.
And now AI is here, bringing in automation and influencing how information is both created and shared is a huge potential shift in that dynamic.
So let's talk about what that shift looks like right now. How is AI actually being used in journalism today?
Well, one of the most common ways is through automated content generation.
Okay.
So AI tools, especially large language models like ChatGPT, are being used to do more routine reporting tasks. Think about those short summaries of company earnings or basic sports recaps, weather reports, that kind of thing.
Ah, got it.
The idea is to handle those more straightforward stories efficiently so journalists have more time for the complex stuff like in-depth reporting and analysis.
So for people who want that deeper understanding, the hope is that AI handles the surface level and humans can go deep on the things that really matter.
Exactly. And it's not just about writing articles either. AI is being used for behind-the-scenes stuff too, like search engine optimization or SEO. There are tools that can craft headlines and social media snippets that are more likely to get clicks, to be seen by the algorithms, all while staying true to the core editorial content. It's about making sure the good stuff actually reaches an audience.
Yeah, that makes sense. If the best reporting in the world is buried where no one can find it, it's not really doing much good.
Exactly.
But what about the more, what's the word, involved journalistic work, like investigative reporting? Can AI even play a role in that kind of complex process?
It actually can. It's called investigative augmentation.
Okay.
Basically, machine learning algorithms can go through tons of data, we're talking millions of documents, to find patterns and connections that a human might miss just because there's so much to sift through. The Panama Papers investigation, for example, could have been spurred up significantly with modern AI tools. And this is crucial, human interpretation is still super important. AI can highlight potential leads, but journalists still have to analyze the information, verify it, and put it all into context.
So AI is more like a super efficient research assistant, not a replacement for the human element of investigation.
Precisely. Think of it as amplifying what humans can already do. Another area where AI is proving really useful is in transcription services.
Uh-huh.
These tools can take hours and hours of recorded interviews and turn them into searchable text very quickly and accurately. And this makes things like fact-checking, verifying quotes, and pulling out P-info much, much faster. Huge time saver for journalists.
Yeah, that's huge for efficiency. But what about the audience? Understanding what people want to read or hear. Is AI involved in that side of things too?
Oh yeah, audience analytics is another big application of AI in journalism. Personalization engines use AI to analyze how people behave online, what they click on, what they spend time reading. And then they tailor news feeds to show people more of what they seem to be interested in. The goal, at least from the news organization's point of view, is to get people more engaged.
It's like the algorithm is trying to figure out what kind of news consumer each person is.
You could say that, and we're also seeing these new regional insight tools coming out. For example, in Germany, Der Spiegel is using AI to summarize long, complex parliamentary debates, making them easier for the average person to understand.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and in France, AFP, the news agency, is using AI to detect deepfakes, which are those videos where someone's face is digitally manipulated to make it look like they said or did something they didn't.
Yeah, I've seen those. So in a way, AI is both a potential source of misinformation and a tool to fight against it.
Exactly. It's this constant back and forth between using technology for good and trying to keep up with the ways it might be used for harm.
All right, so all of this sounds like it could make journalism more efficient and like personalized to what we, the readers and viewers, want. But what about the downsides? How is AI impacting the people who work in journalism and how news organizations make money?
This is where things get a little tricky and maybe even worrying.
Okay.
We're seeing some big shifts happening in the job market for journalists, especially in local news.
Uh-huh.
AI is starting to automate jobs that humans used to do, stuff like sending out direct mail, basic audio editing, even creating graphics. And sadly, this is leading to job losses and more instability for freelance journalists.
So wait, the efficiencies news organizations are gaining by using AI could actually come at the expense of the people who are gathering the news in the first place.
That's a very real concern. On top of that, AI could make the existing inequalities in the job market even worse. We might end up with a system where more and more people are in low-paying jobs managing AI, while those high-skill positions, like investigative journalists, become even harder to get into.
And I imagine the way news is funded is going through even more upheaval with all of this.
Oh, definitely. Click-driven advertising, which is how a lot of online news is funded, tends to favor sites that put out a ton of content. And AI can do that. cheaply.
All right.
So we're seeing these AI-generated content farms popping up, and they're pulling advertising money away from established news sources, even the ones with successful subscription models like the New York Times. It also calls into question the future of things like open archives, where news organizations make money by allowing access to their older content. What's the point when AI can theoretically create something similar without any of that history?
It brings us back to that tension we were talking about earlier, doesn't it? That pull between using AI to cut costs and upholding journalistic standards of ethics and quality. I mean, how are news outlets supposed to balance those competing forces?
It's a real dilemma, and a crucial one. The temptation to save money by using AI is strong, but compromising on good journalism ultimately hurts everyone. It's a crossroads the industry is facing right now, and the choices they make will have a big impact on the quality of information we all receive.
Absolutely. Let's talk about something that I know is a big worry for a lot of people: misinformation. How is AI changing the way fake news is created and spread?
Well, to put it bluntly, AI is proving to be a pretty effective tool for spreading misinformation. We've seen a huge increase in the number of websites that are putting out fake news generated by AI. Reports from just last year show a massive surge in this activity.
That's alarming. What makes AI so good at spreading false information compared to what we've seen in the past?
There are a few things at play here. First, large language models, they can create incredibly convincing news articles on pretty much any topic, and they can do it super fast on a huge scale.
Right.
Second, these models are learning from massive amounts of data. And if that data is filled with inaccuracies or biases, the AI picks those up and repeats them. So in a way, you end up with this vicious cycle where misinformation just keeps getting amplified.
So AI learns from potentially unreliable sources and then turns out even more unreliable information. It's like a hole of mirrors for bad information.
You got it. And maybe the most concerning part for you, as someone trying to stay informed, is that AI-generated misinformation can be incredibly difficult to spot. AI often doesn't have the context or understanding to tell truth from fiction the way humans do.
Hmm.
It might stick a quote on someone that they never said, or distort data without the critical thinking a human journalist would apply.
So it's like a constant race. People are using AI to create increasingly sophisticated fake news, and others are trying to develop AI tools to detect it.
That's a good way to put it. The European Union's AI Act is one attempt to tackle this. They're trying to make the training data for these AI models more transparent and put some regulations in place. But the problem is that enforcing these regulations is tough, especially with all the smaller AI companies popping up all the time.
It feels like a real challenge to keep up. Okay, so all of this raises some really big ethical questions. What are the most pressing ethical issues we're facing as AI becomes a bigger part of journalism?
I think there are four main areas of concern.
Okay, let's hear them.
The first is plagiarism and copyright. Large language models are trained on, well, vast amounts of text, and that includes copyrighted articles.
Uh-huh.
Often, the original authors and news organizations don't get any compensation for this, and this is a real threat to the financial stability of media companies that are investing in producing original reporting.
So it's like AI is learning from and potentially replacing the very sources that it learned from. It's not exactly a fair exchange.
No, it's not. The second concern is about amplifying bias. AI algorithms, they can reflect and even make worse the biases that already exist in society, especially if those biases are present in the data the AI is trained on.
Right.
And this can lead to news coverage that's unfair and misrepresents or targets certain groups of people.
So if the data used to train the AI is biased, the AI will just spit out more biased content.
Exactly. The third area is what we call the accountability vacuum. Basically, if something goes wrong with AI in publishing, like if there's a big factual error in an AI-generated article, who's to blame? The people who developed the AI, the news organization that used it, the AI itself. It's not always clear.
It's a situation where technology is making decisions, but we don't really have a framework for figuring out who bears the ultimate responsibility for those decisions.
Right. It's a big ethical and legal challenge. And then finally, there are the environmental costs to consider.
Oh, yeah.
Training these huge AI models uses a tremendous amount of energy, which has a significant impact on the environment. It's an issue that often gets overshadowed by the other concerns, but it's still really important.
It's kind of a hidden cost of all this technology, but a significant one. Okay, so taking a step back and looking at the bigger picture, how is AI impacting society as a whole? How are citizens engaging with information? How are governments reacting? And what role are big tech platforms playing in all of this?
Well, for citizens, it can be overwhelming.
Okay.
There's just so much information out there, and it's often filtered and curated by AI algorithms in our news feeds. This can actually make it harder to think critically about what we're reading.
Really?
Yeah, people can end up in these filter bubbles where they're only seeing news that confirms their existing beliefs and they're not exposed to different perspectives.
So it's like the personalization that's meant to give us a more relevant experience could actually be making us less informed in some ways.
That's a real risk. As for governments, we're seeing different approaches around the world. The EU, with its AI Act, is taking a more proactive approach, trying to regulate AI in a meaningful way. But in other parts of the world, there's more of a hands-off approach.
Right.
And this lack of global consistency makes it tough to create standards for how AI is governed.
It's hard to make universal rules when different parts of the world have such different philosophies about technology and how to regulate it.
For sure. And then there are the big tech platforms like Meta and Google.
Right.
They're using AI extensively to decide what content gets seen by the most people.
Okay.
And often their algorithms prioritize content that goes viral because that keeps people engaged and on their platforms longer. But this can end up promoting more sensationalized content or stuff that triggers strong emotional reactions, potentially at the expense of more in-depth, well-researched journalism.
So the algorithms that these companies use could be shaping the news we see, not based on what's important, but based on what gets the most clicks and shares.
Yeah, it's definitely a worry for anyone who cares about having an informed public.
It is. Okay, so given all these challenges, what can the journalism industry and even each of us as individuals do to make sure AI is used responsibly? Any advice for navigating this new world?
Adapting is key, and it takes effort from everyone involved. For news organizations, I think the focus should be on creating what we call hybrid workflows.
Okay, what's that?
It means using AI tools strategically for things like transcription and data analysis,
Uh-huh.
but always keeping humans in the loop to make the final decisions, especially when it comes to editorial judgment and ethical considerations. We can't hand those over to machines.
So use AI as a powerful tool, but keep the human journalists in control.
Exactly. News organizations also need to get serious about trust branding. They need to make it crystal clear to their audience when a story has been verified by a human journalist. It's a way to separate credible news from AI-generated content and build trust with readers and viewers.
That's a good point. Highlighting the human element could become a mark of quality. What about individual journalists? What skills do they need to develop to thrive in this new environment?
They have to keep learning. We call it upskilling.
Makes sense.
This means getting comfortable working with AI tools,
Okay.
learning how to engineer prompts to guide AI outputs, and becoming really good at data analysis and fact-checking to make sure anything AI helps create is accurate. They also need to be aware of the limitations and biases of AI.
So they need to become skilled collaborators with AI, almost.
Yes, exactly. And there's going to be a growing need for specialization in those areas where humans are still irreplaceable.
Got it.
Things like investigative reporting, in-depth analysis, and community journalism. Those are the areas that require nuanced understanding, critical thinking, and strong human connections. They're harder to automate.
What about policymakers and regulators? What can they do?
They have a huge responsibility to encourage responsible innovation in this space. That could mean subsidizing innovation in AI tools that are specifically designed to help journalism, especially at the local level. There are precedents for this in other industries. And it would help level the playing field so smaller news organizations could access these tools and use them ethically. On a global level, it's important to push for global standards when it comes to AI ethics and transparency, maybe through organizations like UNESCO.
Right.
This could help prevent a situation where everyone is just racing to the bottom, using AI in whatever way is cheapest, regardless of the ethical implications.
Okay, so we need to think about this from all angles. The newsrooms, the journalists, the policymakers, and even us, the audience. Everyone has a part to play.
Exactly.
Earlier, you mentioned some possible future scenarios. Can you walk us through those again so we can get a sense of how AI and journalism might interact in the years ahead?
Yeah, we laid out 3 potential paths. The first one, we called it the worst-case collapse.
Uh-oh.
This is the bleakest possibility. Imagine a world, let's say by 2030, where AI is being used with no regulations, pumping out tons of misinformation. News organizations are going bankrupt, people don't trust anything they read anymore, and governments are using AI bots to silence anyone who disagrees with them.
That sounds scary.
Yeah. The things that could trigger this scenario are things like lax copyright laws, algorithms that promote extreme content, and massive job losses in journalism.
Okay, what's a more moderate scenario?
The second one, we called it the the most likely hybrid reality, and this might play out by around 2040. In this scenario, AI handles maybe around 60% of the basic news reporting, things like summarizing data, writing those straightforward reports. That frees up human journalists to focus on investigations, in-depth analysis, and really digging deep. There are regulations in place similar to what the EU is doing now to curb the worst kinds of misinformation, but there are still big gaps in how AI is used and regulated around the world. The main things leading to this outcome would be gradual changes in public policy and a lot of pressure from the public demanding more transparency from AI companies.
So a more balanced future, but still with some serious challenges to overcome.
Right, and then there's the most optimistic scenario, which we called best case
Let's
symbiosis.
hear it.
This might happen, say, by 2050 or beyond.
Okay.
Imagine AI making it easier for anyone to use powerful investigative tools. More local community-focused reporting is happening, and fact-checking is happening in real time at scale.
Wow.
We might even have things like universal basic income to support journalists who have been displaced by AI so they can use their skills in new ways, like mentoring or leading community workshops.
I like that.
This kind of future would depend on people designing AI ethically from the ground up.
Right.
Close collaboration between tech companies, newsrooms, and governments, and renewed investment in quality journalism from the public.
Those are some pretty powerful possibilities. It feels like we're at a point where the decisions we make right now will determine which path we end up on.
We're at what you could call an algorithmic crossroads. The choices made by news organizations, tech companies, policymakers, and even all of us as news consumers will determine what the future of journalism looks like and how it shapes society.
So to wrap things up here, it's clear that AI isn't just another passing fad for journalism.
Definitely not.
It's a fundamental shift, one that could lead to amazing advancements, but also some pretty serious risks to truth, trust, and the very heart of what journalism is supposed to be.
Absolutely. We can't avoid the integration of AI into journalism.
Right.
It's happening. But the impact it has on society, that's still up in the air. We have to prioritize ethical considerations, make sure humans are still in control, and build a strong public commitment to accurate and reliable information. That's how we can navigate this successfully.
I love that. And with that, I want to leave you, the listener, with one final thought to ponder. As AI changes how news is created and how we consume it, what will your role be? How will you decide what to believe? How will you distinguish between something written by a human and something generated by a machine? And what responsibility do we all have to create a future where technology helps us become more informed rather than less? Think about which of those future scenarios we talked about seems most likely to you, and what you can do, even in a small way, to help bring about the outcome you'd like to see. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.